welcome to our meeting today. We are offering interpretation and translation today. If you look at the screen, there are instructions on how to set up your setup to listen to interpretation. At the bottom right of your screen, there is an icon that says interpretation. If you click on the globe, you can select the language of your choice. It's important that you click on the globe even if you don't need interpretation into English. In case somebody takes the floor who speaks Spanish, you'll be able to, if you click on English, you'll be able to listen to the interpretation from Spanish into English. Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos a esta reunión. Estamos ofreciendo interpretación. Si hace el favor de pulsar el globito en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla, donde dice interpretación, y selecciona el idioma de su preferencia. Thank you, Chris.
All right.
All right. All ready to get started here?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. We're very excited to be coming to you in Spanish now, too. And we'll go ahead and kick off. Welcome, everyone, to your meeting for the DOTI Advisory Board for September 12th. We will go ahead and kick things off with roll call. Can I hand that over to you, Alan?
You'll have to just give me a moment, Jake. I'm struggling to find the shared file folder here. If you don't mind giving me a moment, please.
No worries.
And Anita, while we're waiting, just a quick reminder to move translations account over into the translation channel.
Okay, I'm gonna add it right now.
Alan, I believe I have the list, if that'd be helpful.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm having trouble finding access to the file folder right now with all of our notes. So yeah, that would be great if you could run with it, Jake.
Okay. I just sent you a link as a heads up, but I'll run through it here.
Thank you.
First and foremost, Alan.
Here.
Jolie.
Here.
Brian Carroll.
Here.
Jonathan Pira.
Here.
Some Amy Contreras.
Here.
Some Paul Gonzer. Julie Riskin. Ian Chowdhury. Kurt Morrison. All right. Aileen McCallum.
Here.
Lucia Brown.
Here.
Jake Cohen's present. Alicia Brown. All right. Jamie Lewis. Gary Johnson.
Present.
Christopher Johnson.
Here. Sorry about that. Here.
And Tinsley or
Here.
anyone I missed on the attendance there? All right, what's our count at, Alan?
I apologize, Jake. I wasn't getting the count there.
No worries. I'll run through it here.
I was pulling up our meeting notes, and I just while you're pulling that up, I just want to say thank you so much for Councilwoman Chantel Lewis, who helped make us aware that there were folks from the Montbello neighborhood that were Spanish speakers that wanted to participate tonight, and in general with the DOTI Advisory Board for making us aware of this. And also want to say thank you to Rebecca and Chris from the DOTI Office of Community and Business Engagement for helping set this up tonight, as well as the language access folks here. So I just want to say thank you for everyone, make this meeting more accessible and inclusive of everyone. So thank you all again.
All right, we're at 11, so that should be enough for a quorum. With a quorum, can I get a motion to approve the August meeting minutes?
Motion to approve the August meeting minutes.
In a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? All right, our August minutes are approved. And with that, we'll hand it over to public comment.
Yes, on the public comment, we have Jacob. Jacob, are you here with us? I will promote him to the panelist. Jacob, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Good to go?
Yes, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. I'm Jacob Schutt, live in Cheeseman Park, right near Cheeseman Park, Capitol Hill area. Just wanted to say I appreciate all the work this group does, and just wanted to, on a positive note, just say how much I appreciate the work that's being done on the bike lanes. Daylighting some intersections, just seeing a lot of that work being done. It's been really positive. I live really close to the 7th and Williams intersection that's had a lot of work done, and truly enjoy it. And I hope that it's a stepping stone for further improvement. Definitely some complaints, or maybe not the most visually appealing, but I think from a traffic and safety point of view, it's absolutely great. It's just a good place to start. The new filter on Franklin and 13th is pretty solid as well. And then the bike lane going all the way across, I think that's 16th from the high school down to downtown, is also great with the protected dividers. Just wanted to just be positive and just hope that this is a all these steps that are done can be grown upon and continue to be evaluated and lead to a safer community for everyone that's walking, biking, anything like that. So appreciate the work you guys are doing, and excited to hear more about everything else that's going forward. So that's all I have, and thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob.
Anita, did we have any other public comment?
No, that was the only one.
All right. Thank you to our public comment. Handing it over to Nick. Are you presenting our DOTI leadership report? I'm thinking that's a yes.
Yes, it was. And here's unmuted. Yes. You have to excuse, I'm getting over a cold here, so sound a little like Eartha Kitt. A few items here. First up, a budget update. You know, talking with the leadership team of the committee here, we were hoping this would time out a little better so that we could present kind of what the mayor's budget has been or is going to be, and what's going to be presented to council. We are 2 days short, so Thursday you will see a press release, and you will see the release of Mayor Johnston's first budget. And that's kind of the process of it going into council's hands on there. You will, and kind of well, before I go into that, and then DOTI we will have our city council presentation on next Tuesday. So if you'd like to watch that will be on the Denver 8 online, of course, on there. So tighter budget schedule than previous years. I mean, more so because we have a brand new mayor on it, and you know the elections are a little bit later than usual on there. So it's been very exciting. But yeah, I look forward to kind of discussing in more depth the budget and what's going on in the process at our next meeting. Also, speaking of budget, today you will have seen or the Mayor Johnston released details on how he is funding the House 1000 effort. Just a reminder, I'm sure most folks on this are familiar with that, but that is Mayor Johnston's effort to house 1,000 folks that are currently experiencing homelessness on the streets by the end of the year. And so that's been a very intensive effort. I, along with a number of a few other DOTI staff, have been working very hard in the Emergency Operations Center to really coordinate both kind of an effort on how do we begin to transition folks, and then also how do we make sure that is that housing available for folks to go to as we get it built up. And so DOTI's been very instrumental in looking about how we're doing the hotel conversions, as well as the smaller kind of tiny home residential sleeping units that we'll be transitioning folks to in the very near future on that. So certainly more to come on that. And then lastly, Sidewalk Committee, we will have, this is the stakeholder committee that is recommending amendments to the Initiative 307 Denver Deserves Sidewalks, and we will have, our next meeting is tomorrow, and we have elected a chair, vice chair, and secretary. And we're going to be going just kind of over how we want to operate these meetings. We've had a couple good, robust discussions on it. You know, our first substantive topic coming out of this will be everybody's favorite part of Colorado law, Tabor. So if you're not familiar with that, that is just kind of what defines a fee, what defines a tax, and kind of how you legislatively would go about doing those. Of course, 307 is a fee, and goal is to not move it into a tax. That would, I'm not even sure what the impact of that would be, but that really kind of limits what types of amendments will be recommended ultimately on that. So next meeting is tomorrow, and then all meetings are now the second and fourth Wednesday of every month going forward. Also on that, breaking news, well, as of a couple hours ago, Councilwoman Sandoval did propose an amendment. It went through LUTI and passed through LUTI to delay billing of the sidewalk fee. We had originally planned to begin that at the beginning of 2024. This effectively delays that to July of 2024. On there, you know, on the positive side, that will, you know, assuming that there are recommended changes to the fee structure, that means the first bill should reflect that finalized fee structure. You know, getting it out in January was unlikely that the stakeholder committee would have been able to complete its work and then go through the legislative process for that first bill. So this should reduce some confusion. You know, on the more challenging side, it does delay kind of the receipt of funding for another 6 months on there. On balance, I think it's a positive, and appears that the city council feels the same way. So with that, stop. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe. Yeah. Well, I had a question on the budget. You're saying that in a couple of days it comes out. Is that right? Did I?
Yes. So I believe the mayor's got a press conference on Thursday.
Okay. Is that when we get to see it, or?
Yes. Yes. That's when it officially becomes public.
And so the whole public gets to see it. Okay. But is there any chance next year that we can see it before it becomes public, or is that just the rules?
It is. I mean, it's always been the rules.
Control. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
No, I know that you don't have much control over it.
Right. You know, it's always been the rules, but we can certainly ask or see if there's a way we could figure that out. You know, I think next year's budget process, it'll be Mayor Johnston's second one. You know, probably a little bit less exciting, the bad kind of exciting on that. So we could certainly ask, but yeah, certainly until it is public, yeah, we've gotten very clear direction not to release it.
Okay, thank you.
Jonathan.
I think you mentioned this in the course of the discussion, but you said Thursday is the budget release for the 2024 proposal from Mayor Johnston. We know from prior years that there are always presentations from each department to council. Did you also mention, do we know when DOTI's presentation to council is in that series? Which day?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So yeah,
1 week
pretty
from
quick.
today.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Pretty quick turnaround. I think we are at 9 a.m.
Okay, and this might be something we discussed a little bit later in the meeting as well. But for those of you who were not with us last year, I would highly recommend that anyone interested in learning more about the budget or commenting further within our group, either watch that live or as a recording. They are recorded and posted online elsewhere. They make what is a very long and very complex budget document much more comprehensible for what I'd say I call the lay person. The budget document itself is literally thousands of pages long, and it can be hard to tell which parts of the budget are connected to which department, but the department specific presentations really help break it down.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any other questions for Nick?
I put a question in the chat. So the presentation's next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Is this to a particular council committee, or is this to the full council on Tuesday?
Should be the full council, and I'm double checking. Yeah,
Is it in chambers or is it on Zoom or how?
It is in Par Widener, but it should be on Denver 8. I think
Par
these are.
Widener, that's a room.
Yes, that's kind of a secondary room in the city and county building.
Okay.
And to know, Lucia, that's during this weekend, I think week and a half, maybe it's 2 weeks, council suspends its typical agenda of committee meetings and council schedule and has a lot of these budget meetings going on every day. So that's why full council is able to manage to see all of them. For most of us who are working during those hours, they are all recorded and can be watched later.
Thanks, Jonathan.
All right, not seeing any other questions or comments. So thank you, Nick, so much for the leadership report.
Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. I'm sure you all had a chance to hopefully see the agenda before our meeting today, but given the timing of the budget and the timing of our meeting, we're in a particularly challenging situation for the DOTI staff on being able to have very detailed conversations with us this month in our meeting. So with this, they've got basically 2 months to get from the mayor's inauguration to a finalized budget. And I'm sure many of those hours will happen tonight, tomorrow, and beyond it before Thursday. So with that, we did, talk to Nick a little bit and wanted to give DOTI staff a little chance to breathe and focus on the budget this week. With that being said, this meeting is intended to be more of a internal board discussion. So while we don't have a presenter from the DOTI staff, what we were hoping to do was start off with district reviews, hear from each member of our DOTI board here about what's going on in your district lately, either what you've been seeing or hearing from community members in your district in topics that relate to DOTI. And then after that, we'll transition into some board general working time. We'll re-review the topic list as well as prepare for forthcoming budget discussions. With that budget coming on Thursday, we want to do a little bit of pre-work on the budgeting. So with that being said, we'll kick things off first with some district reviews. We do have a good chunk of time for this, so hopefully we can get to everyone. And mayoral appointees, feel free to share about the city more broadly. But I didn't know if anyone wanted to kick us off here, but I won't make calling on you mandatory. Gary.
Sure, thank you. Just real quickly, in our district, we're really concerned about the sidewalk ordinance, and I know Councilman Flynn is heavily involved with trying to work out an equitable fee collection system. And so we're tuned in on that. We still have the issue of the trash fee collection by HOAs. In my opinion, it hasn't been fully resolved. And then we're going to put another fee on top of the stormwater fee, the trash collection fee, and now the sidewalk fee. So we're, you know, I think our district is particularly where I live, is very concerned about how to budget for all those fees. And I've been asking about what that budget might look like prior to bills going up, especially for the sidewalk fee, so we can rebudget our own HOA, because our budgeting process runs in concurrent with the city's budgeting process. And then we have some ongoing things I can present to you from the policy committee in just a few moments. But generally, that's the story from our district. So I'll turn it over for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Alan.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, just from District 1, Northwest Denver. Definitely some similar concerns on how sidewalk ordinance will be implemented, and there'll be more to come from that out of the committee, and excited to participate in that. Just a lot of general safety concerns I'm hearing from some of the RNOs and community members that have reached out to me. We had, unfortunately, a bad accident up at 41st and Irving, next to Skinner Middle School. Just last week, there was a student that was hit on 26th Avenue that's okay, but going to Brown Elementary School. So a lot of concerns from parents just about safe routes to schools right now. DOTI is meeting with, I think, Brown Elementary, thanks to Councilwoman Thunderval and her initiating it later this week. So grateful for DOTI for connecting with our councilwoman and for parents from the community about that. And just general concerns about the safety of Federal Boulevard, Sheridan Boulevard, West Colfax, 38th Avenue. I've heard that from community members as well. Folks would like to see more things like leading pedestrian indicators, safer crossings, and sidewalks. You know, we're missing some pretty substantial chunks of the sidewalk network here. So I think folks are also very interested in getting that implemented as quickly as possible. So those are some of the things we've been hearing in Northwest Denver as of late.
Thank you so much, Alan. Tinsley.
All right, are you guys ready? Okay, so for the far northeast, there's actually the main concern, honestly, is that we don't have infrastructure. I'm sure you guys have heard that before. So it's not like, you know, a new thing that I'm speaking on here. There's definitely a need for social service buildings, for you know, better safety on the street as well. So I'll switch subjects now. It's really hard because there's a whole list of traffic lights that we're still kind of like trying to track, me and Stacy Gilmore, and we're waiting to hear back, I know, on some of those lights. But the main concern is the sorry, I'm driving too. So the main concern is honestly like the traffic violations that people are making, and they're not being held accountable for their actions. There's also the whole issue with DOTI and the trash contractor for the for people who are supposed to maintain the bus stops. So that's an issue that we're seeing people kind of bring up often, the lack of resource for the bus stops. And the RTD director, she's pretty open to like continuing to talk about getting more stops out in GVR. But also it's the maintenance that's most important, I think, that people are concerned about. There's been a lot of accidents around Highline Academy, so I'd be interested. I didn't even necessarily know that the council people could help organize meetings with schools in terms of traffic and accidents and things like that. So I'd be interested in probably having you guys reach out with me and Stacy to see if we can talk to Highland Academy about what they're seeing for accidents around their school, because they're surrounded by, I believe, 3 busy streets to one side. So that's rough. Other than that, I think to go back, I think it's the lack of the infrastructure and the supports that I think most of my community is really concerned about. And we understand also that the mayor has a potential site out here for his homeless initiative, which is fine. It's just we're worried about servicing those people and not overloading the system as well. So maybe DOTI can help think creatively on ways to transport some of those people, or figure out a way for them to get the resources that they need, transportation wise. Lastly, and I think probably most importantly to the residents right now, is getting the connector in Green Valley Ranch. I know that's a continuing conversation, so I'm not going to go too into it, but we definitely think that that's something needed sooner than later. I think that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Tinsley. All right. I'll go and represent my district here. Luckily, have some very vocal members of our council district, which gives me some good things to talk about here.
And Jake, just for you and everyone else, would you guys mind calling out what district that you're in? And I know you're District 10, but I don't remember everyone's district by number. If you could just call it out so I can be sure to get that in the notes.
Thank you, Alan.
Tinsley is with District 11. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, Jake Cohen, District 10, Councilman Hines district. So one of the top concerns that has continually been coming to the top of our list is the speeding and stoplight and stop sign running are key concerns. I have heard from one constituent that there are nearly weekly crashes at 22nd and Blake. That's actually in District 9, but came from a District 10 resident, but a lot of T-bones and red lights running at that intersection is leading to a lot of crashes there. Also a lot of crashes, a lot of speed and traffic safety concerns at around Maury Middle School. Maury Middle School is bounded by 13th and 14th Avenue, which I know has been consistently brought up as a speeding concern. But there's lots of other speeding and red light running concerns in the district. But those are some particular examples that I heard about. One thing that keeps coming up in District 10 is a lack of a north-south bike route between Cheeseman Park and Grant. It's, I actually heard it at the mayoral homeless meetup or discussion town hall. In our district, someone actually brought up that there's no bike facility in that area, and it continues to be a concern for the neighborhood. Have a lot of line items about sidewalk and bike lane closures and lacking detours, particularly around construction sites. In general, a lot of residents are feeling frustration that they're not understanding what's mandated. They heard about the detour program a couple of years back, but are feeling like things are pretty consistently being blocked as far as sidewalks and bike lanes go. There's some particular concerns around the city actually leading and walking the talk on this, particularly at the Central Library branch at 13th and between 13th and 14th on Broadway. There's been a lot of frustration that these sidewalks and bike lanes have been closed nearly all summer at the Central Branch Library, and hopes that the city would be following kind of the detour guidelines as well. And then did have concern from a resident that had some discussions with the chief construction inspector and after that conversation, their conclusion was that it seemed that the construction inspecting team seems to hand out exemptions to the detour policy pretty liberally if the construction company complains. So hoping we can be better about how we approach detours around construction sites or temporary encroachments in the right of way. And then lastly, lots of great news on opening streets to pedestrians, particularly Larimer and Glenarm. But I know in District 10 there was some mini bummed people around the 7th Avenue pedestrian street closure that they were hoping would stay open to people who were walking. Understand the bike facility on there, but there were a lot of people that were hoping could find a alternative path. So thank you for listening to the District 10 list. And I think, Brian, you're up next.
All right, so I'm a mayoral appointee, originally from MBAC, so I'll comment on bike infrastructure. I do want to comment on the continued rollout of the bike program, especially downtown and some of the neighborhood bikeways. It's been exciting to see some of the protected bikeways go in. In particular, though, I want to talk about the neighborhood bikeways, which I think as I've seen a substantial upgrade to the types of facilities that are going in there. I think of the Garfield neighborhood bikeway in particular, which has been game changing as far as a north-south connection and putting in, kind of hardened diverters. And I think, when you look at the previous generation of bikeways, I don't know that it made that much of a difference in the bikeability of the neighborhoods. These diverters are, like I said, game changing. And it's really exciting to see some actual connectivity going in, throughout the city. Again, I'll point out the Garfield from Cherry Creek all the way to City Park as a really good example of a north-south connection that where there really wasn't one before, and it was difficult to access that previously. So if anyone hasn't seen some of those, I would encourage you to get out and ride that. That's really all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Joe.
Yeah, so I want to repeat that. We've seen quite a bit of progress in district. I represent District 5, which goes through Lowry and Crestmore, Hilltop, and then we just picked up Cherry Creek and the Denver Country Club. And so it's quite a long, narrow thing in the middle of the city on the east side. And so we've seen quite a bit of bike infrastructure go in, which is very pleasing, and most people are complimentary of it. Again, I don't know if it's in Jake's area or not. The 7th Avenue was a little bit of a hiccup, but they talked to the neighbors and got that straightened out. But to repeat what everybody else is saying, I think traffic is really the gang concern in our neighborhood. And Councilwoman Amanda Sawyer has had several meetings. There's a project there's streets in Lowry, Uinta, which has become a racetrack. So we've had at least 3 different meetings with the police, who are very cooperative, and with DOTI personnel, and try to get that solved to reduce the speeds there. And there's also some tricky roundabouts, if you know anything about Lowry, that they're working on trying to make that a little bit better. But there's also 13th and 14th with the neighbors. We've had several meetings there. And there, it's been a little bit more frustrating of how to really calm that traffic down. And of course, there are fears now that the closing of some lanes in Colfax for the Colfax, whatever it's called, the Colfax new bus line could cause some problems there, but the neighbors are all willing to see what happens on that. There are also some issues about crossing of major streets by bicycle lanes, especially Quebec. There's some schools on either side and kids are crossing, and the citizenry is not feeling safe about that. So again, there's quite a bit of this wherever the traffic is. We don't have that many through streets, but the ones that there, people are speeding, and the neighbors are getting a little upset about it, not being able to really enforce that. On the other side too, we would like to get some circulators. I know they're going into a lot of neighborhoods, and we don't have the needs that other neighborhoods have, but we're talking about trying to get there's Rose Hospital and some of the major institutions, if we could have a little circulator bus to do that. So people, especially elderly, don't have to walk and don't have to find rides and everything else. And outside of that, I think that's pretty much what it is. We are in contact with the police. They've been very cooperative. Crime is not a major issue and all that. So we're pretty pleased with what's going on in the neighborhood, if we could only control the traffic. So.
Thank you, Joe. Lucia?
Hi there. So I met with my council person last week, and aside from she's hearing complaints, the sidewalk thing, mostly from people who have corner lots, and I assured her that the committee is working diligently on trying to figure out the fee structure, and there was something else I was going to say. Yes. Well, regarding bike lanes and infrastructure and all that, she feels like at least the west side of her district doesn't have enough. And the west side of District 7 is basically west of the Platte River between roughly Evans and 6th Avenue. So it includes Ruby Hill, Athmar, well, not quite to 6th Avenue, but Ruby Hill, Athmar, and mostly in some of Overland. So there isn't a whole lot of bike infrastructure going through.
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
Going through Athmar or Ruby Hill. So that's about it. That is DOTI related, at least. Lots of concerns for crime on Broadway, but that's not a DOTI issue.
Awesome. Thank you, Lucia. Paul?
Hey guys, I'm District 6, so University Park, Belcaro, Virginia Vale, that sort. And most of my feedback is extremely positive. I've just heard a lot of great things about the bike infrastructure that's been put in and people obviously utilizing it during nice times. I think the one concern staring down the barrel of when snow will occur is does DOTI have the infrastructure to keep the designated separated bike lanes clear so they don't become, ice sheets until April when they thaw out, especially those on the south sides of streets where they won't get direct sunlight exposure for a couple months. But in general, all the feedback I've been hearing is super positive.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Aileen?
Yeah, so I'm in Southeast Denver, District 4, so just extreme Southeast Denver, near the DTC. One thing that I wanted to talk about was how many kids are riding bikes to schools in our districts. And I know Alan got a lot of press recently for his bike bus, but I've been so excited to watch so many more kids riding bikes to school in our neighborhood specifically, and just also a lot more diversity of kids riding bikes to schools. And I definitely attribute it to the increase in bike infrastructure and the neighborhood bikeways that have been installed over the last several years in Southeast Denver. And it's just really exciting to see not only the kids have the freedom to ride their bikes to school and kind of develop that sense of self through added mobility, but also the freedom for the parents that it gives, not having to go through the stress of driving in your car and go through the traffic jam that is after school pickup. It's so beneficial for the mental health of the parents that the kids can actually get themselves home or get themselves to school in the morning. I also wanted to echo Joe's comments and others' comments about the behavior of people driving cars around the city. Just personally, I've experienced some really aggressive drivers out there when I'm seemingly following all the laws, and just because they want to go faster and get around me, and they don't I'm doing things for the safety of other folks driving around me, and just a lot of angst out there with people who are driving cars. And I don't know that our board can necessarily do anything about that in Denver, but I do think it's important to call it out when we're starting to see, we're all noticing it, right? Third thing that I wanted to add was that I've seen a noticeable increase in the number of Lyft scooters and Lyft and Lime scooters and bikes down here in Southeast Denver, and that wasn't always the case. So I have a lot of questions about how that's happening and why it's happening, and especially in an area that's pretty transit rich, but not necessarily typically really friendly to other multi-modes. A lot of people use park and rides here in Southeast Denver. So I'm really curious in the future to see what those statistics are on people using the scooters and the e-bikes to get from their homes to the transit stations, or just, you know, to run their errands down here in Southeast Denver, where the transit service isn't as great and sidewalks are narrow, but we have great transit lines. So that's it from Southeast Denver, and pass it along to someone else.
Thanks, Aileen. Jonathan.
Yeah, hey, I think I'm up next. So I am also a mayoral representative, but we'll comment on a couple of areas that are district specific for me, at least in Villa Park and in the West Colfax area, and a couple of other things I've been hearing from other areas. First and foremost, a couple of things folks are really excited about. This isn't DOTI directly, but we just opened a new park in West Colfax, and there are 2 parks under design, Joseph Martinez and one other down in the Lakewood Gulch area. Folks are really excited about that, as well as the new Villa Park and Westwood trail improvements that are coming in now, which I know is more DPR than DOTI, but it does link because it's bike connections and some of those transit connections as well, but between those improvements. And this is interestingly, like a little bit beyond when the implementation happened, but I've been hearing a lot of people in the neighborhood comment very positively about some of the neighborhood transportation management plan improvements that were put in 2020 and 2021, and sort of related safe routes to school improvements. There are now some pedestrian bump outs and flex posts and other things near the Cheltenham Elementary crossings, where people speed a lot on Irving and Colfax in that area. And there are a number of other sort of minor paint improvements, such as new crosswalks in the area down near Lakewood Gulch and also near Sloan's Lake Park, that I think people, I'm probably hearing more commentary on it now, even though they're almost a year old, because people are starting to like really recognize and appreciate the value of these things and seeing how it impacts their kids getting to school, their kids getting to the park, things like that. So a couple really positive elements there. Very recently, hearing a lot of concern about what I'll call like off arterial safety. 14th Avenue over here in West Colfax has, for I think like 20 years, been on our bicycle plan to become a bikeway. It's the only east-west route south of Colfax Avenue until you get to the Lakewood Gulch or the other side of it. But there aren't any sort of safety improvements on it. And it's a very common route for people who want to dodge traffic on Colfax to fly down. A lot of drunk driving hits as well after Empower Field events, a lot of cars and people getting hit there. So probably for, I think 2 years now, and in sort of increasing escalation recently, I've heard a wider variety of people saying, we keep getting promised something's happening on 14th, when and what is happening there. It's not safe, particularly with concerns that there will be construction on Colfax starting next year. And so folks are worried that if Colfax is closed in part or in whole, it will be the primary thoroughfare for people to head down. Something else Tinsley brought up that we hear as well, probably every couple months or so, I hear someone bring it up, is questions about the relation between our neighborhood, Wheat Ridge, Edgewater, and Lakewood, and like how decisions get made along Sheridan Boulevard and other cross areas like that when there are multiple departments that need to work together for any improvements. A lot of questions about sort of 311, how that works, how things get done, what's going on with tickets there. And also in a related note there, something Jake brought up as well that I was going to mention, a lot of questions about our what used to be called the Detour program. I don't know actually what the name of it is in the rules and regs now, but last year some new rules were published about permits not being granted for construction sites until there was like a pedestrian and bike I guess transportation plan in place, such as a protected walkway, something along those lines. And I think there's been a lot of folks are just sort of confused about it because they know I've mentioned that rules changed last year. But they're still seeing like unsafe construction sites go up. And so now they're confused as to like, okay, when in the process is this permit granted? I assume it's just that some of these sites had permits granted more than a year ago, and that's why they're still able to get by this way. But I think people are just curious what to do about it. Like, who do I report this to if it seems wrong? How do I tell if they have a permit? How do we stop this from happening again? So a lot of questions about that, what I'll call the detour program, even though I know it's not officially called that anymore. Something Tinsley mentioned as well is echoed here, bus stop trash, wondering who and how and when trash in and around bus stops is meant to be collected. A variety of different levels of bus stop amenities. Some have trash cans, some don't. Even the ones with trash cans are often overflowing and sort of blowing in the wind. A lot of questions about the status of major nearby intersecting like large development projects right at the border of Sun Valley, Villa Park, and West Colfax here. We have the River Mile, we have the stadium, we have the Colfax Cloverleaf. We have a lot of things that people have been talking about, getting huge transformational projects going year after year, and nobody sees anything breaking down or hearing about it. And they're all wondering, are these projects still going? Are they canceled? Are they stopped? What's the status? How do they relate to each other? Are we thinking about them together? And I think the last thing that I'm hearing some recent frustration with this, because I think people are just starting to realize it now, is Colfax BRT. For the first many years of that project, Colfax BRT was not only supposed to be East Colfax, it was supposed to continue to Federal Decatur Station and then down West Colfax. And then about a year and a half ago, that part just sort of quietly disappeared from the plans. And so a lot of folks over here were expecting that we'd have the West Colfax BRT soon. And now they're hearing that it won't be here at all, ever. It's not even in the 2050 plan. So some element of sort of like shock and confusion as to how that happened over here. So that's what I've largely been hearing up in my section of D3 lately. I'm wondering, actually, Amy, I know you haven't spoken yet. I don't know if you have a better grasp of what's going on down in like the Westwood and Valverde and other areas that I'm not as closely connected to.
No,
anyway,
I think
yeah.
You said everything great. And yeah, I would just say, I guess some concerns would be like the rezonings, like the row homes kind of displacing some residents and families in the neighborhood, the school closure. I would just say that that's the only thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan and Amy. Tinsley and Aileen, I see you still have hands raised. Are those old or are those new?
Mine are old and new, so I never put it down by accident. I apologize for that. But I also wanted to clarify when you're talking about the new development situation and some of those bigger projects, I did want to include the Green Valley Ranch area in that, and like mostly to clarify just what is the process that they have now as far as the planning and development of the transportation stuff. Like, I just kind of want to get an update and like how they do new developments, I guess, like how they make the agreements for new developments. I don't know if that was ever like officially talked about. I know it's a thread, because you got to deal with processes to be here, but just kind of wondering more like the plan of the new developments that are coming, what DOTI's role in some of those new developments are, etc. And I'll put my hand down now.
Thank you, Tinsley. Christopher.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Christopher Johnson, District 8, representing Chantel Lewis, and that great district. Anyway, I don't have a lot of feedback from my neighbors and the district, but what I have heard, and it's a continuing story, is concerns mostly about speeding and racing cars on our main city streets. So specifically, I've heard Central Park, I-70. I know that's a DOT area, but and then also Colfax and even MLK. So there's definitely concerns about that. It seems to be a weekend party thing for kids to be doing. And I know that's very trivial for this group, but it is a concern. Secondly, I have heard from more than one of my neighbors. They are concerned about the growing traffic due to the development in the Central Park neighborhood, and would like very much for the city to look at opening up Smith Road as an east-west alternative to some of our existing east-west roadways. And then on the positive side, just getting really great feedback. Once people have gotten to gotten used to the bike lanes that have put in, the protected bike lanes, actually they're feeling better about them and they understand them. Drivers aren't driving over them as much as they were, so that's a great success. Thanks for listening. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Christopher. I'm not seeing any more hands at the moment. I don't know if we have anyone that wasn't able to speak. Jamie, did you get a chance to have any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, you and I both live in District 10, so I think you covered most of it. I think people are starting to realize that this construction for Broadway is slowly winding down, so I think they're very happy about that. I did have a question in the chat. I was curious if there's any status of the 20 is plenty, and can we ask the police department if they've handed out more tickets in that particular area? So if we can get a report out at the next meeting, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Jamie. Anyone else who didn't get a chance to speak about their district or if they're mayoral appointee more broadly? Paul.
I'm taking this meeting at the U Hills Library, and I saw my first 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign coming in. So just anecdotal, that was a first, and I logged several miles through most of the neighborhood in the course of a given month. So, yeah.
Thanks, Paul. And just due diligence for me, Chris, is that a new hand or old hand?
Sorry.
No, you're good. Awesome. Okay. Thank you everyone for sharing. With that in mind, wrapping up our district reviews process, we can head into our board general working time a little bit early today. One thing that we wanted to highlight on the general working time was to discuss through a re-review of our topics. I think that there's a lot that everyone called out in those sessions around updates on their district. So if there's anything that came particularly to mind that we maybe need to revisit as a topic as Jonathan and I work through that list, I think I heard that speeding was maybe a renewed focus. I don't know if there are other topics that we heard on that list. I know we had speeding on the list, so I think we can cover it. But we'll love to hear from you all if you think any of those need to be elevated. Lucia.
So I didn't mention this because it's not my district, but I do ride through like downtown frequently, and I'm just wondering about enforcement of bike lane blockages. For example, every single time I go down the 15th Street bike lane, there are either delivery trucks or cars parked right in front of the building. It's between Arapahoe and the street that's right before Arapahoe. I can't remember which one it is. Always, and it always forces you out into traffic. And I was riding just yesterday, and there was another person riding along with me, and you know, we both got stopped, and she said she apparently rides us all the time. She's like, every time. There's zero enforcement. And I don't know what we need to do. I don't know if it's a right-of-way issue or police need to be out issuing tickets. Looks, you know, look a good revenue generator for me. But anyway, that's just a topic, generally speaking, bike lane blockage, and these are protected bike lanes, so I'm not even sure they're having to how they're even getting in there.
Lucia, just so I can document it correctly, are you talking like right in front of Brooks Tower, I think it's called, on 15th and Arapahoe? Sorry, you're on mute.
Yes, it's 15th and Arapahoe.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll also add into that, anecdotally, doing that corridor often 15th and 17th, it tends to be everywhere that a hotel exists along that with a cutout for vehicle entrance and like, you know, taxi, Uber, Lyft drop off as well. I've noticed anecdotally.
I am adding this to our topic list. One thing I do know is New York City has a citizen reporting method for identifying bike lane blockages. Is that part of this topic discussion we'd like to put into that topic, or is it a separate one?
I love that idea.
Great. We'll add it in. Eileen.
Can we also talk about though the actual ticketing by the police? I mean, the citizen ticketing is awesome, or you know, whatever that shakes out to be, but I really hate to like think about people in bike lanes as like less than, because we're only providing service ways that citizens can report like bike lane blockages, but we aren't asking the police or the city in more an official capacity to do the same type of ticketing that they do for parking and speeding and other things like that. Just want to make sure that there's parity there between the modes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Tinsley.
Yeah, I just wanted to tag along with that. The whole ticketing thing in the far northeast and Montbello is definitely scarce as well. Enforcement of all traffic and bike and everything. So like, but particular to transportation, we had one day, I think it had to be like 3 or 4 months ago, where the police were out there for the whole day on a Thursday, and they got so many tickets because so many people were not following the rules. So and people walking and driving. So I definitely think that that's a big topic, to be honest.
Thank you. Alan.
Sorry. I just want to add that I love the idea of wanting to make sure that people are going to be safe, but as we think about doing this in an equitable way, I love the concept of revisiting, you know, automated enforcement and what can we do to enforce the rules without necessarily having, you know, interaction with law enforcement in that process. So I love the idea of the concept, but also want to kind of look at about the most equitable way of enforcing it.
Thank you, Alan. Paul.
I'll say one other thing too, in terms of future topics to visit. Anecdotally, there's 7 to a dozen intersections that I'll routinely pass through at nighttime that have upgraded pedestrian capacity, almost always a school zone coinciding at a corner of major streets coming together near schools. And they have automatic pedestrian crossing cycles, which come for all 4 ways, which I'm all for in the 3 p.m. hour when the kids are getting out of school. I come across them routinely on weekends at 10 p.m. at night on a holiday. I don't know how smart our smart infrastructure is. I know so much of what we talk about is about the alternative options to cars, but I'm also a big believer in the smart use of vehicular traffic, not idling vehicles, not contributing emissions and such when unnecessary. And so I would be curious to visit if there's any way to update that so that I'm not being stopped at the corner of a school intersection for 30 seconds in both directions at 9:30 at night on a Saturday. That's minute in the scheme of things, but contributes towards our environmental goals, certainly. So.
Thank you, Paul. Joe?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we worked on the 911 center for Denver, and part of the whole problem with 911 is now everybody has a cell phone and everybody reports everything. So there may be an accident. You can imagine the old days you ran to a phone booth and made a call, and now they get 100 calls on 911. So I'm just wondering, do we have to consider that when we're talking about the citizens going ahead and, reporting stuff or whatever they're going to do, that we just have to have the system to back that up, or otherwise I can just see everybody calling in and saying, hey, there's a bike or there's a trash can or there's a car parked in there. So you could overwhelm the system pretty easily is what I'm saying. So we should take that into consideration when we look into that topic. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Just for the record, I think the way that the New York City system works is they have a separate app where you take a picture to document the vehicle. It's like okay. Any other topics I'm missing? Would it be helpful for me to run through all the themes? I'm thinking yes. Any nods? Okay. All right. So the themes we have right now are, and so all of you submitted submissions. We have all those documented, and then we bucket them into themes to try to design a meeting around. And we'll work on getting staff resources allocated to them. But the themes are speed reduction efforts, 311 customer service, the bicycle plan, the budget, community engagement, data review, e-bikes, enforcement, equity, large development reviews. Just for clarity, that's like Barnum Yard and River Mile, micro mobility, open streets, aka Viva streets, sidewalks, snow, staffing and operations, strategic plans, transit and RTD, trash and compost, wastewater, schools, and jurisdictions. That's the Edgewater, Sheridan, Arvada kind of issues. Any notable items missing from that list? Tinsley.
Just like a side item. I don't think it's like it should be noted yet because we're not sure exactly where in the process we are, but I am also on the Coca-Cola advisory board, and we might need DOTI advisory board to help brainstorm some things. So maybe put that at the very bottom as a potential topic for a meeting, just in case we need you guys.
Thank you, Tinsley. Alan?
Yeah, I just want to call out for what Tinzu is saying, not just the central Denver developments, but also want to make sure we think about like the GVR and Montbello developments as well when we think about big developments too.
Good call. All right. Okay. Any other comments on our theme development? All right. With that being said, I was actually hoping we could sneak in and sorry for putting you two on the spot, but Jamie and Gary, I was hoping we could sneak in a policy topic. I think there may be some policy committee updates that may potentially work their way into a theme, but I thought it'd be a good time for a policy committee update as well.
Yeah, right now it feels like we're drinking from a water hose. There's just so many different subjects out there. But Lucia and I attended a meeting yesterday, and we kind of found out some new information about the Pena Boulevard And so we'll probably be discussing that at our next policy meeting. And I know that's not on our list, but I know it's a subject that's come up several times. So we might have something for you guys at our next meeting considering Pena Boulevard. Gary, do you have anything?
Thanks, Jamie. No, I just wanted to recap 2 or 3 things that we were talking about in the policy meeting the last time. One, of course, is smart signals. We want to continue to look into that. The prioritization that Jake is talking about, I think that's very important. We need to work on that. We also need to look at the red light camera enforcement issue, how we can encourage that further development. And then you've already mentioned Pena Boulevard. That's a very integrated program with RTD, and so we need to be conscious of that. But we'll get into that, as you mentioned, Jamie, in a at the next meeting. So that's kind of what I wanted to mention.
And our next meeting is the 20th at 10 o'clock. So if anybody would like to attend, we encourage you to.
Lucia?
Hi, yes, and the other thing that we were talking about, which is tangentially DOTI related, I guess they would have to deal with the signs and whatnot, but and it's also been on the news, is no right turn on reds in the city. And it's a growing movement throughout the country. For those of you who don't know, right turns on red only became legal in the 70s after the oil crisis, as a way to maybe save on gas. But there's actually no evidence that it made any impact in that regard. But what did happen is once they legalized right turns on red, we saw pedestrian and bicycle injuries and deaths go up quite a bit. So there are already some municipalities and places in the United States that have already banned right turns on red. Seattle, I think, is one of them. Ann Arbor. There's a few others I can't think of right off the top of my head. But yes, so that is the next, if we're aiming for Vision Zero, that is the next thing that's kind of an easier thing to do to reduce the number of people getting killed on our streets.
Yeah, and I think I'm excited for that work from the policy committee. I know Jill, who presented at our last meeting on the mayor's transition team, that was one of their major recommendations to the mayor in the transition. So I think it's something that we should look at as a potential theme as that the policy committee continues their work on that. And I believe Inc. is also, the neighborhood organization is also aligned with that priority. So thank you for the policy committee for the update. I was hoping now we could turn to our conversations about the budget. As we mentioned earlier, the budget will be released on Thursday, which makes this really unfortunate timing for all of us because we'd love to get into the budget details. But Alan, I was hoping, if you don't mind me calling on you, that you could give an update on the budget committee and potential things that you guys are planning to discuss, as well as lessons from last year.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jake, for that introduction. So first of all, want to let you know that the budget committee is going to be meeting on Friday, September 22nd at noon. I will, before I hop off here, I'll email the board with the Zoom link for that, and anyone is welcome to attend, whether you feel like you're on the budget committee or not. You're all on the budget committee in theory, so anyone can join for that. The purpose of that meeting will be really carving out and discussing in a robust way what are some of the recommendations that we have for the mayor, for city council as a board, for the department, for DOTI, that we would like to see potentially modified in the mayor's budget that's coming out on Thursday. So I want to emphasize, just to kind of echo what Jonathan and Nick said, is that it's if you can beforehand, please try to view the city council presentation. For those of you that are district appointees, If you have questions for your council members that you'd like to ask of DOTI, that's a great opportunity to maybe try to feed them some questions or ideas of things to ask, because DOTI does a great job about going through all the concerns and questions that council has in that presentation. And I think it's also a great opportunity to get the 30,000-foot overview of how the department's money is going to be spent. The DOTI team does a great job of giving an overview on everything, not down to the line item, but we'll give you a pretty good idea of some highlights of what's going to change and what's going to go on. So you certainly don't have to watch that before our meeting on Friday the 22nd, but if you do, I think it's going to answer a lot of the questions that you might have and bring up some great ideas. So I want to make sure that the entire board has the opportunity to comment. So our goal at that Friday the 22nd meeting is to come up with some concrete recommendations, and then we'll distribute that to the board by email, and then folks can add your additional comments or ideas that you'd like to see on there. I'll pause for a second. Does anyone have any questions so far? Great. I know we haven't seen the budget yet. I know that this group did come up with some budget recommendations back in the spring, summer for DOTI. A lot of concerns about Vision Zero and wanting to see that properly funded, multimodal funding, and things like that. While we're together as a group, while we have the opportunity for some conversation, does anyone have anything else that they'd like to add for consideration to the list for budget items, if for the fiscal 2024 year?
As a suggestion, I don't know the legality of this, so this may be a simple no, but so much of what we talk about here is the lack of enforcement mechanism. And I know my understanding is it's a staffing issue, not a budgetary issue on the DPD side, but then maybe there's a civilian enforcement side to right-of-way issues, and maybe that falls under DOTI and then becomes a budgetary line item. So just throwing that out there, I may be delusional and barking up the wrong tree there.
Yeah, there's definitely, for things like it's right-of-way enforcement is the civilian end of the cities, right? So that is the group that comes out if you're at a meter too long, or if you're parked at a bike lane, that you could get a ticket from right-of-way enforcement. You probably recognize them. They usually drive around little Jeeps with the DOTI logo on the side kind of thing. So I'm hearing from you, Paul, that you'd like to consideration for more budget for robust enforcement of right-of-way issues.
The one thing I always come around to is we have these grand policy goals and they're great, but so much of it only works if there's an enforcement mechanism. So whatever my opinions may be on banning turns on red lights or whatnot, we can keep adding recommendations and policy in to enforce rules, or to let me back that up, to make rules. If there is no enforcement mechanism for them, this is all for naught. So it's the parable: lead with the stick, lead with the carrot. There needs to be some investment in stick, I guess, is where I'm going with that.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. I definitely will record that feedback to make sure that we feel there's adequate funding for right-of-way enforcement of at least the DOTI side of things that we do control in this department. Thanks. Jake?
Yeah, I funnily enough was also going to talk about enforcement, which we didn't plan that. But I do think that if I could propose that we try to do something on the budget, I do think that with the state law around allowing additional use of speed cameras and automated traffic enforcement cameras, it is something that the department, I think, will need some budget to get the initiative kicked off with, either for studies into next intersections or actual implementation. I think enforcement's always a tough conversation, but when it comes to automated enforcement, there's some potential improvements in equity, as well as these are topics that are coming up time and time again. And it is, with the staffing issue at the police department and their traffic unit, it does seem like the only tool we have in the stick category. And so I think I'd love for us to see if we could potentially, find ways to encourage the department and the mayor's office to consider that. Additionally, I think that there's some definite desires from the mayor to put a lot of funding into homelessness right now, which I don't think is inappropriate. But I do think, I worry about resources for this department, and I think it's, there's always a conversation with automated enforcement about the fact that there's potential additional revenue there. So I think that this needs to be done because it needs to be done. But I think there's some potential upside that it could be budget neutral or potentially budget positive. So I think that is why it would make sense in this time period in this budget when other things might not.
That's great feedback, Jake. Thanks. I'll definitely record that. Be sure to incorporate it in the letter that we'll put together. Tinsley, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you guys already have on your agenda for the budget for the far northeast in general. But I would really like to take a look at what you guys have so far as priorities for the far northeast. So I will be attending the meeting on the 22nd for sure. But I did want to bring up more funding for traffic lights, traffic signals are automated, like you guys had mentioned, but also just in general, a new traffic study might be warranted at this point, depending on when the last one was done, particularly because of the huge influx of population out here. We just have had 13 apartment buildings built within the last 2 years that are huge complexes. So we are having a huge influx of people and traffic. And I think that working on that with DOTI and budgeting appropriately to make sure that we're servicing all these new residents out here, because I will be frank with you, a lot of what you guys were saying, while they're extremely concerning issues, we aren't even in a place to have issues like you guys do because we don't have it. So really just trying to pay attention with the budget when it comes to new infrastructure would be very helpful. But I will be at the meeting to kind of look at what you guys got already.
Great. And I'll try to, when I pass out that meeting link for the Zoom, Tinsley, I will include the letter that we sent to DOTI earlier this year. That's a great reminder. Thank you for mentioning that, so you and anyone else attending can refresh on what we've already sent to the department.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks for that feedback. I'll definitely record that. Anyone else? Thoughts on budget? No, great. Well, thanks, Jake, for allowing some time to go through that and to chat through that. The one other thing I'll mention as secretary, I will be running our meeting notes through Google Translate, so into Spanish afterwards. So hopefully I know it's not the most accurate translation, but it's a fairly accurate, hopefully, translation to make our meeting minutes more accessible as well. So hopefully going forward, having our notes both in English and in Spanish for folks.
All right. Thank you, Alan. Any additional comments about budget as a topic? It's tough to prepare. The timing's tough this year. Hopefully next year we'll get magical timing and the budget will come out the day before our meeting. So here's hoping. Reminder for everyone to do as best you can to get a chance to watch that recording. If you can't watch it live from the budget presentation, a reminder that our key charter item is to provide oversight and advisement on the budget for the department. So just if you're thinking of why are we here, that is our number one priority. It's a little challenging in the way that the city's structured. So it's not an easy job, but just a reminder that that's what we've been asked to do by the voters. All right, we have this time until 5:50. So now that we've covered kind of our initial items on our board general working time, want to open it up if there's other items that this group wants to discuss. Anything at all. It's a magical wish list time.
We're gonna wish we had this after the budget comes out.
What's the chances? Hey guys, I didn't even raise my hand this time, but what are the chances of like actually having a digital like enforcement program? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, all the digital enforcement, the cameras, those kinds of things, like an entire, I mean, I don't know what the program would look like, but I'm just saying like, just to kind of solidify some things around that in particular, because I keep seeing it come up, you know, everybody's talking about it. And yeah, right. Does the technology even exist and how can we use it? Because I think in every single district, we have all said the same thing, that we need more enforcement, better traffic. So I'm just trying to think if maybe that's like a sub thing, like creating a, I don't know, I wouldn't say a committee, but just like, does DOTI do that? Like create programs for these kinds of things so that it's, I mean, I don't know. I'm just talking, but I think that it needs something more robust than us just recommending. Like I would hope that DOTI would really take it into consideration that we really need an overhaul in this subject, since like every single district is bringing it up, if that makes sense.
Jonathan.
Yeah, just to respond and give a little background on that. The city does do this today. When I say this, what I mean is speed cameras and red light cameras. So having it posted certain intersections, cameras to automate catching folks who are speeding or going through a red light. However, there are very few in the city. I think it's only 4 or 6 red light intersections in the city. The program used to be much larger. I think it was back in the 60s. There were like 300 of them. But state law came into place. There was a state law made that forbade the use of most red light and speed cameras in cities in Colorado. We have had that small program continuing since. And in fact, thank you for posting that, Alan. We did have a presentation from the folks that managed that program in January of this year. So we have a recording of that meeting. That meeting occurred though, just I think about 2 months, maybe 3 months before that state law was changed. In this legislative session in Colorado, that state law was changed to say that cities could start expanding safety camera programs with certain restrictions related to equity. There need to be full equity plans regarding where and how those cameras are used to make sure that we don't end up in the same scenario that we saw in, say, Chicago, where those safety cameras were placed only in low-income neighborhoods and generally targeted low-income and Black communities for funding, and were considered what people might call a cash grab per se. Now, the program in Denver, as it's been built till now, is an interesting program because while it is revenue positive, it does actually bring in more money than it costs to run. That's not the intention of the program. The program actually wants to be revenue negative because the goal of the program is to reduce the number of these red light braking and like speeding incidents such that the cameras are losing the city money. But it is an odd scenario where in order for us to expand this program, we're going to need to not only make sure we have a strong equity plan in place for it, we also need the initial budget approved to say buy those cameras, expand those contracts, and the revenue from that will come in later. So there's sort of a weird budget situation there where even though it's revenue positive, it does require like an initial cash outlay to expand. We have not heard from David and Ted again since that law changed, but we have let them know that we would love to hear more from them when they have a new update. We know Denver was one of the cities interested in expanding these programs when they were as effective as they have been, essentially. And I think it's just taking a little time for the city to say, okay, let's take a closer look at that state law, see what's required, make sure we meet those requirements, and bring a proposal to city council. Hopefully we can catch wind of that proposal before it gets to council, just so we can respond to it and see more about it. But I know a lot of us on the line were excited to hear more about that program once the state law changed this year.
Yeah, and I just dropped it in chat, but Aurora's already taking advantage of the program, and they are rolling out a pilot, or I think they already have rolled out a pilot that runs through next year on automated enforcement as well. So we know it's doable to act very quickly on this. I'm not sure how Aurora came up with the funding on that, but I think it's something that DOTI should look on as well, knowing that Aurora was able to act so quickly. This might be an adjacent topic. I just legitimately don't know the answer and don't know how to figure it out. I've tried to look for it. Registration fees, my understanding is that DOTI receives some of the funding that goes into registration fees for for car registrations or vehicle registrations rather. I walk around my neighborhood and see tags that say 2016 all the time. That like they haven't had, so you can't blame it on COVID. Like they haven't had tags since 2016. Hate to call out a potential rival state of Colorado, but when I see Texas plates, their registration tags in the front window. And so it seems to be a thing that seems culturally okay, that if you have Texas plates, you know no one's going to see a tag on the back license plate. So you just never update it. And most of those say like 2020, 2019. So I know that a lot of that money goes to the state. But I was curious if anyone had any resources or any way for me to figure out what potential revenue are we giving up by not enforcing those registration fees, because I actually think it's pretty significant. And my concern is that looking at what a registration fee covers, a lot of it is 911 services, bridge building and bridge updating. And I'm worried that we're leaving a lot of revenue on the table by not enforcing that. But first I was trying to get an understanding of just how much revenue we are giving up. I don't know if anyone on this call has that answer, but I'm interested in exploring it if anyone else is.
Jake, do you actually know, and you've looked into this, do you know who, kind of like we talk about right away versus the police versus others, who's supposed to enforce that in the way that like police will say we can't do bike lane tickets, that has to be right away? Are there multiple agencies that can do the tags, or is it just the police?
I know we do tags. We won't, like if someone calls in, we won't dispatch someone for simply for tags, just based on kind of resource management on that. But I don't know, I assume PD can write tickets for those as well, but I don't know that for certain.
Yeah, I think what concerns me is like a lot of the cars I've seen parked in the public right of way for like 5-6 years. Like they're, we all have that neighbor that has the same car in front of their house for years, right? But when it says Rhode Island 2016, you kind of wonder at what point we have a lot of DOTI right-of-way enforcement in our neighborhood. I'm just curious, where is that a priority? Or I know the state changed the rules to allow more enforcement.
Yeah, and I'm getting out beyond my knowledge here on the out-of-state stuff.
Okay.
That's a good question, though.
Nick, do you know what funding we do get from registration by any chance?
Not offhand, no. I don't think it's a lot, though.
Okay, got it. It seemed like maybe the bridge fee was the biggest one, but it looks like CDOT might distribute that back to DOTI.
I think you're right.
Okay. Got it. All right, tangent over on registration. Thank you for indulging me. All right, other odds and ends topics. Aileen.
Could we have a presentation on the nuances of the Pena Boulevard situation? Just because it's complicated with RTD and the city and county of Denver and the airport and the federal rules that are in play. And I know that we're all really well, okay, I sense we're all really curious about it and would love to just learn more about the complexities of that issue.
That's a good question. We definitely have it as something that I know the policy committee has looked into, Aileen. I do want to call out that it is a bit of a complex topic, like jurisdictionally, if you will, given that it is DEN's project, not DOTI's, though our friend Nicholas is one of our city's DRCOG representatives. So I'm sure he has some answers on some of the complexity here, and then RTD is also.
Yeah, it's like great to have a policy conversation. And I recognize that our policy options may be limited, or we're going to have to get super creative in what we recommend. I'm definitely a fan, though, of not letting the complexity of this jurisdictional situation get in the way of like some creative solutions. But before we're ever going to have like a real legitimate session to talk about creative solutions, which hopefully everybody else is talking about too, we have to understand the basics so that we can figure out what loopholes there might be, or what we have to advocate for, or what we have to plead with the federal government to get like a waiver on, or whatever the case is. Oh, you're on mute or something.
Yes,
There you go.
Jake, you said it. This is one that's being led by Dan and the alternatives analysis on there, but I've seen them give a number of very good presentations on this, and I'm sure they'd be happy to come out and visit with us.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be good. And I know that some of the initial answers that they had provided in their FAQ around what the FAA will let them fund on transit does not seem to match some examples I've seen with particularly San Francisco funded a BART extension that looks like it's almost exactly like the A line. That seems like if they could do it, we should be able to.
Well, I was also having a lot of questions about how would I know, like DOT has given waivers to cities on MUTCD, or I'm not explaining, like not doing things per MUTCD code. So I feel like there's just got to be ways around this, but don't want to necessarily have that conversation yet, but like really understanding what we're running into.
Joe, sorry, your hand's been up for a while.
Yeah, well, we're doing a project, the fire station actually off of, I think it's 58th and Pena. So we've been talking very closely with Den, and Nick is exactly right. Den's sort of running this, and there's been some neighborhood meetings, which anybody can go to. I don't know if they're over yet or not. I had the list, and I can send that to the committee here. And they are considering everything, but it looks like the rail transit is kind of taken off the table right now, and they're trying to figure out the highway, the traffic. And there are some different ones about having a completely separated road, slightly connected road, and there'll all be limited traffic and a road for RTD. So they're still trying to get neighborhood input. But it was a little disappointing that they say, we know we're going to need rail and all that, but like I said, it's too complicated. We can't tie these two together. We got to fix the traffic, and then we'll work on the rail later. So, but I'll send everybody the information I got from Den, who again, as Nick says, sort of running the thing and trying to get neighborhood input. Although again, you're never sure how far that'll go, but at least they're requesting that. And it looks like they've gotten some well thought out, designs, or at least initial proposals and all that, but it's not going to really solve what we're looking for as far as I'm concerned, but you guys can be the judge of that.
Yeah. I think if I can make a recommendation, I do think the Pena Boulevard topic is big enough that it reminds me of our conversations around I-25 and Broadway. And I think that there may be a reason to kick off a kind of special committee or like a branch off of the policy committee where there's dedicated meetings to the Pena Boulevard conversation. I think it is a very big topic, and I'd like to have a group that can look into it a little bit bigger outside of the context of our monthly meetings. Don't know if we have much volunteers or interest in taking that on this board. I'd hope we would, but I think that work probably makes sense given all this question gathering outside of this group, outside of this broader whole committee group. Joe, that's you volunteering, right? Your hand up.
Jake, I'll volunteer.
I love it. All right, Aileen.
Yeah, just should I just connect with Nick then to figure out next steps on who to get some information from? And
Well, it
then
sounds
anybody
like-
else can email me.
It sounds like Jamie's saying that the policy committee is going to be talking about it in their next meeting, and they'll have a guest speaker about it. So I'm wondering if that might be the next best point of like figure out what's next for that.
Yeah,
Yes,
let us
that sounds
let us collect some base information, then we can take it from there.
Okay, so Jamie, I'll look for an email about when, I know you said it. I feel like you said September 20th at 10
Correct.
a.m.
10 o'clock. Yeah. I'll include you on the invite.
Okay, I gotta go to soccer. Bye, everyone.
Awesome. Sounds like we'll have a home for Pena to thrive as a conversation then in the DOTI policy committee plus Aileen. All right. This is what happens when the board runs meetings, apparently, rather than getting some staff presentations. There's a lot of just Jake asking if anyone has additional questions. I'm not hearing a ton, so would love to throw it out there. But if not, would love anyone to review their action items list. I know we've talked about that historically, and see if there's any action list that this group is either taking out of today's meeting and or additional topics that are ongoing. Key items for, I think, if I can speak for him, Jonathan and I are continuing to work on the themes list, including a lot of the input that you all gave today, especially around your district related topics, as well as our broader themes topic. We have an actions list item to talk about Pena Boulevard in the DOTI policy committee with Aileen. And then we have a budget policy or budget committee on next Friday to discuss the details of the budget. Everyone is given the homework of watching the DOTI presentation around the budget. And if you're so inclined and a nerd like me, we'll also read the PDF of the budget. And then from there, that is the list of action items I've captured. So if I've missed any or you'd like to share other ones, please feel free to do so now.
Jake, it's okay to end the meeting before 6 o'clock. Just want you to know that. I don't think it's in our bylaws.
I think we're headed that way. I just want to make sure we didn't let any voices go unheard. Alan.
Yeah, I just have actually an action item request for DOTI staff. They have been so great at posting all of our meetings on YouTube, usually within a week or two of having the meeting so the public can see it. I guess my question is for DOTI staff is there a way for us to post the Spanish recording of the meeting for the translation? I don't even know if that's possible, if it's being recorded right now, but just a question I had or a thought if it's possible to do that.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Great. Thank you guys so much. That'll make it very accessible, and then we can share it with all the folks in our community that will benefit from hearing this wonderful translation that the team is doing tonight, or the interpretation, excuse me, that the team is doing tonight.
Awesome. Seeing no other hands, I think we can make Joe's wish come true and wrap a little early, which I hope will be especially appreciated by those on the DOTI team in the midst of budget week. And to those of you working on the budget, best of luck this week. Nick, I'm guessing your cold is related to that. Awesome. Thank you all. Sorry, I was struggling with my mute button, but thank you all. I think we can wrap early. Appreciate the time. And let's have some budget fun this week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night. What should I do with YouTube?